Moving forward, we're at the Ottawa Senators now. And of course, everybody agrees the Senators won't make the playoffs. Right, Sens fans? There will be some Sens fans who disagree. There will be those optimistic Senators fans who think that this team can make a big jump. There are so many bodies on this roster that could make it. They're going to be interesting to watch once we reach September and training camp arrives. And you got a coach on the ice looking around going, holy crap, we've got a lot of players. We've got a lot of players. Now, the problem with that is how many of them are elite level players. That's where you run into a bit of a problem. So you've got some really good players who are average, and you've got some guys mixed in there that are pretty good. But in terms of that actual elite level talent, that's still on the way. So this past season they had 64 points. The year before 67. 2016-17, of course, was the big year. 98 points, very nearly in the Stanley Cup Finals. And, of course, they lose in heartbreaking fashion. And since then, the team has been torn to shreds. The year prior to that, they had 85 points. The year prior to that, 99. Ottawa had a nice pattern going of good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. So every other year, they were pretty good. And sometimes they'd go on a nice playoff run while they were at it. That's over. We're now into full rebuild mode, and Eugene Melnick's decided he's going to save as much money as possible. Goals for this past season, they were 18th in the league with 242. If you think that sounds high, it kind of does, considering how messed up the whole season was for them. But then defensively, they allowed 302 goals, which is last overall in the NHL, which means, hey, they're going to be first this year because that's what the Islanders did. That's not how these things work. And there's virtually no chance that the Islanders are going to be replicated by the Senators, and we can talk about that. By the end of October, this team was 4-5-2. They actually had a strong start of 4-2-1, and there was some talk early about, hey, these Senators aren't as bad as we thought they were going to be, and then they were just as bad as we thought they were going to be. By the end of November, they were 11-12-3. By the end of December, 15-21-4. By the end of January, 19-26-5, and then the bottom falls out when the full-on rebuild and let's sell everybody starts. They were 22-37-5 at the end of February, 28-44-6 at the end of March, and 29-47-6 by the end of the season in April. It was a half decent start through November. 11-12-3 isn't bad. It's not going to make the playoffs, not even going to be close in the East, but it's not bad. It's better than the 29-47-6 finish that they had. So the question becomes, have they done enough to increase the talent on the roster to hope to avoid another season in the 64-point range? Maybe. They might have a bit of an upswing this year, but is it going to be enough of an upswing for them to finish ahead of 31st in the league? That I'm not so sure about. MVP of this team for me is Brady Tkachuk. Brady Tkachuk, young kid. Is he ready for this yet? I don't know, but whether he's ready or he's not is immaterial. It's his team. Shabbat as well on the blue line is going to be a very, very valuable player, but I really think Tkachuk's going to go out there and dictate the game as a forward, as only a Tkachuk can. Last five playoffs, of course, they were out in 2019 and 2018 by a mile. 2017, as I said, they went to round 3. 2016, they were out of the playoffs, and in 2015, they got eliminated in the first round. So some playoff success in there, but that's long in the rearview mirror right now if you're an Ottawa fan. Out of the lineup of players who finished the season as Senators, Zach Smith, Magnus Pajärvi, and Brian Gibbons. I wouldn't rule out Pajärvi being brought back somehow. I wouldn't rule out them signing 7 or 8 more guys, because why not? They've got so many players. We're going to get to that. Your goals leader, I expected to be Tkachuk. I'd be very surprised if Brady Tkachuk doesn't lead this team in goals. Dark horse, I went with Alex Formenton, who is kind of jumbled up on a depth chart that's as jumbled as it gets. What about? I put Maxime Lajoie. Maxime Lajoie had a good start to the season, and then it really fell apart for him fast. He's not going to be an offensive defenseman, but I think he's going to be solid. I know his numbers were scary in year 1. He may very well have this season in the American League to get himself going. But I see him as sort of a maybe he makes the roster and forces the Senators to make an uncomfortable decision about who they keep and who they drop. Trade bait, if you're a veteran on this team, get ready to hear your name in trade rumors from now until the trade deadline. Because this team, I don't think, is done selling. I think if they can get value back for any veteran on this team, I think they're all for sale. And there's a problem with that. There's the problem that you're going to have a harder time signing veterans when they see the way the veterans have been treated by the team. That does become an issue. And right now, Ottawa would not be an attractive location for an unrestricted free agent as it is. So it's going to be tricky for them. The mantra that, all right, we're going to be probably pretty bad this year and then next year. And yet, Eugene Melnyk this summer said he expected to be competing for a playoff spot in 2020. I don't see how that's possible. I really, really don't. I see a team that's a little bit better, but these are expansion level improvements in that you're making incremental improvements of adding players that, yes, they're legit NHL players, but are they going to provide a ton of scoring? No. So up front, Brady Tkachuk, Jean-Gabriel Pageau may very well be the first line center, and Connor Brown could very well be the first line right winger, because this is bizarre. Now, I like Pageau as much as the next guy. Pageau should be a third line center. Ideally, a third line center. Second line then would be Bodker, Tierney, and I'm thinking White, who is still out there unsigned. It'll happen. He's not going to hold out into the season, I don't think, unless he doesn't want to play in Ottawa. Tierney could very well end up being first line, but again, this is the same thing. Tierney ideally should be third line. On the third line, you've got Duclair, Anisimov, and probably Bobby Ryan. Anisimov, right where he belongs, is the third line center. So there's 3 third line centers vying for that number 1 center position, and any of the 3 could get it. Anisimov, Tierney, and Pageau will fight it out, and any of those 3 could end up being the first line center for the Ottawa Senators, which is why I can't project these guys being any good. And then you look at the wings, and there's some decent guys on here. Like Duclair had a decent run after being brought over, but is he top 6? No. Is Bodker worthy of top 6 on a contending team? No. So the actual level of talent on this team is questionable. When you look at Connor Brown and say, yeah, he could end up on the first line, that's problematic in and of itself. Now, Colin White likely bumps him down, and maybe even Bobby Ryan or Max Veronneau ends up bumping him down. But the fact that you can go, yeah, he might end up there is a problem. Rudolph Balcers, Drake Batherson, and Max Veronneau is what I've got on the fourth line. Balcers likely wouldn't work as a fourth line guy. There were complaints last year that Balcers wasn't being played enough. If he's on the fourth line, that's not going to get better. And then you look at Tyler Ennis was brought in as a UFA in the offseason. He's going to play. Now he may end up on the right side. Nick Paul, he's going to play some games this year. He won't. I don't think he'll play as much as Ennis. And then Jack Rodewald is on the right side too. But Ennis can play on the right side. There's Formenton, Logan Brown. If Logan Brown pushes his way into a roster spot, Logan Brown with a really good training camp could be your number 1 center. You could have Logan Brown between Brady Tkachuk and Connor Brown, I guess. You could have the 2 Browns and the Tkachuk. I don't know. Vitaly Abramov may very well push into a roster spot. Philip Chlapik, and Josh Norris, who came over from San Jose. If he manages to make it into the roster this year, that could be big. But again, there are so many ifs. There's so many players, so many kids, that it is really hard to project 4 lines. You could sit down and draw names out of a hat. Just put left wings on one, center in the other, right wing in the other, and pull random names out, and you'd have a pretty good chance of being close. Just as much as anybody else. Because really, in all honesty, the one thing that the Ottawa Senators can sell their forwards on and their defense, the roster's wide open. Come in, have a good camp, you can make the team. Unheralded, not a problem. You come in, you have a really good camp, you can make the team. Now, on the blue line, things are a little bit more figured out, kind of. Thomas Chabot, clearly. Nikita Zaitsev likely ends up on that first pairing, although Ron Hainsey could push him down. Hainsey could end up on a pairing with Shabbat, and that might be good for Thomas Shabbat. Eric Brandstrom and Nikita Zaitsev could be a tandem. It could be Brandstrom and Hainsey as well. Brandstrom, of course, is the key to this blue line. Brandstrom came over from Vegas in the Mark Stone deal. If Brandstrom struggles, if Brandstrom isn't the real deal, if he has issues at the NHL level, then the Ottawa Senators are in deep trouble. And Pierre Dorion, he may end up looking for a new job. Eugene Melnyk, while he's preaching patience, I don't know how much of that he's buying himself. Mark Borowiecki and Dylan DeMello would round out the top six defense. The thing is, Christian Wolanin played pretty well, and Christian Jaros played, I think it was 61 games last year. So they've got good depth on the blue line. You've got Maxime Lajoie, Cody Golubev, Ole Alsing, who signed with them this spring, and Andreas Englund is still there as well. There's a lot of depth on that blue line. There's a lot of youth as well. I still find it weird that Eugene Melnyk came out during the year and said, "Oh, we're doing the rebuild right." You know, the Toronto Maple Leafs did their rebuild and they forgot defense. And then in the offseason, the first thing they do is get Zaitsev and Hainsey from Toronto, and they've got Brown and Ennis up front from Toronto, and they get a coach from Toronto. Toronto didn't do it right. Let's do what Toronto did. Okay, yeah, all right. Brilliant. All right, we hit an iceberg, boys. Now we're gonna hit another iceberg and get this ship to New York. Brilliant. Anyways, I do expect more out of this defense core than is probably going to be expected. I don't think this team ends up 31st in goals against. I don't know that they end up as high as 18th in goals for either. Now, goaltending could be tricky. Craig Anderson, older, having trouble staying healthy for a full season. And, you know, he's an inspirational guy. He absolutely is. And I like Anderson as much as anybody else, but I do wonder about his ability to play 50-plus games right now. Anders Nilsson played pretty well for Ottawa after the trade. Can he keep it up over a full season? That's the issue. That's why he keeps getting bounced around the league. Which leaves Philip Gustafsson out there as the number 3 goaltender, who very possibly could end up playing some games this year because they're going to want to see what they've got with him. The Sens are tough. They're a tough one to look at and try to figure out who is going to play where. Those 4 lines, I have no idea. And I could have kept going. There were other players that I was like, well, gee, I could put that one on the board too. You could just keep going. But having a sheer number of players who can make your roster being large doesn't necessarily mean that roster is going to be a playoff team. So for me, I can't see how they don't finish 8th. I look at the rest of this division. I can't see how they pass Buffalo, Detroit. I can't see them being ahead of Montreal. I can't see them being ahead of Florida. I can't. So again, to me, there's nowhere to put them other than 8th. To me, the Ottawa Senators are the 8th place team in that division. And I think that's the plan. I get the feeling that Eugene Melnyk coming out and saying I expect to be competitive for a playoff spot in 2020 is either him blowing smoke or just he's way too optimistic. It's going to be a long year. The good news is if you're a Sens fan, you're going to see a lot of these kids come into the lineup and you're going to get a good vision of what the team's going to look like a couple years from now. The one issue that's going to be a problem as they go through this and they try to, okay, now we're ready to go to the playoffs, is having those veterans to keep these kids together. It's something that Toronto did very well. You know, you can argue a lot about how, Marleau was too much money and that was a stupid move bringing in Marleau. Marleau helped to shepherd the kids along and made those kids better. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in Toronto without Marleau there and how well he's trained those kids in Toronto. I don't see a Patrick Marleau on the Ottawa Senators. And I'm not sure that the Ottawa Senators a year from now would be able to entice a guy like a Marleau, a guy who's near the end of his career and looking to get a chance to perhaps win and play with a really good young team. It's going to be interesting to see how they do it because they've got an owner who's known for being cheap. who had a strained relationship with the veterans who've left. So those veterans who've left Ottawa are going to be out telling other players how it feels to play in Ottawa, and it may not be very complimentary of Ottawa. So while I do admit, this is going to be fun watching this team this year because of all the kids, it's also going to be a challenge getting them out of this period of rebuild and getting them back into the playoffs and building the team back up, because there's a lot that's gone down over the last couple of years that makes it tough to turn it around. But here's to hoping that they do. I've cheered for the Sens for a long time. They've strained my fandom over the last year and a half, definitely. But I really do hope they turn it around. I would love to be 100% wrong and see this team go on an incredible run and somehow magically make the playoffs. But I don't see it. I don't see it with this roster as it's currently thrown together. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happen upon this video. And thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.